Hello, everybody. Welcome to Starfleet Tactical. I am Chris Weave. As always, my partner Patrick Doyle is here as well. Well, as I guess not always, because you weren't here last week.
That's true.
Truth in advertising, I actually did eat spam today. So I decided I needed to wear the spam t-shirt. But I've been thinking that I need to get a t-shirt. Pat and I both need t-shirts that say, what we have to say is not the words of our employer and shouldn't be interpreted as such. Don't you think
That's
those
true.
are good t-shirts?
It is not. That might actually make a great t-shirt.
It might, yeah, it might actually.
I do have a t-shirt my wife got for me that maybe I ought to wear. Is what was it? Oh, I think it says, "I'm a pilot" in great big letters. And then to save time, let's just always assume I'm right.
Yes. My guess is she got you that t-shirt, yet she doesn't actually follow the directions on that t-shirt.
It's conceivable.
So I will point out that Pat's wife used to be a flight attendant, and they actually met on an airplane, if I remember correctly, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, the first time I actually saw her was actually in the airport, but
right.
She was dragging her back. She had walked over to the incorrect airplane. And so I had actually seen her walk in, came down to two gates. My gate's here, my gate's on the left side. And I was walking up to my gate, and then she walked through the door to go to this other place, I think. And I was flying to Birmingham. So I walked through the Birmingham gate door. And then shortly thereafter, I see her dragging her bags across and over all the fuel lines and stuff, because it was Birmingham and Binghamton were sitting right next to each other. And she had just walked over to the Binghamton gate. And then so rather than come out the gate and back around, she just hauled all her junk and bags over all the fuel lines and airlines and all that kind of stuff. And I looked at her when I was walking to the plane and just started laughing, and I believe she said, "Not a word." And that was the first time I met her.
Yeah, and from what you were saying, there is since she was very experienced hanging out with pilots as a flight attendant, that there is nobody on this planet that's more surprised than she is that she married a pilot.
She did not expect it. Came in from the north under the radar.
So this would tell you what an extraordinary human being Pat is. So,
or just lucky.
Yeah, or just lucky. Aren't we all? So a few things. First of all, happy birthday to Wright Sublette, whose birthday I believe was yesterday. And Wright,
happy birthday.
If I am saying your last, it just occurred to me, I had the opportunity to ask you exactly how to spell your last name or pronounce your last name when I had dinner with you the other night, and I didn't do that. So if I'm wrong on that, please correct me on that. But it's been a while since Pat and I were both together on air, because I went out of town and stuff like that. So I think when Pat and I talked earlier today, we were going to talk a little bit about everything that's happened to the two of us since the last time we were on the air together. And then because I did some traveling that had a few interesting pieces, some of which might be interesting to science fiction fans. And then we're going to talk specifically about episodes of Star Trek that didn't happen. And
so, yes.
So go ahead and explain what we mean by that, Pat.
Well, so this all started a long time ago, but Chris and I were having a conversation. I think we were talking about Yesterday's Enterprise and maybe Inner Light, and probably a few others, and probably some of them are on the list of things we'll talk about tonight. And, and Chris's go-to statement generally is that when I have the choice between watching a movie or watching Yesterday's Enterprise twice, I'll usually watch Yesterday's Enterprise twice. And I believe he considers it one of the best Star Trek episodes. And then I believe I said to him, yeah, I agree. Those are definitely some of the best Star Trek episodes. But you know what? They never happened, right? So, the simple fact is they happened in a time loop or, it was a vision or something along those lines. They're nonetheless great episodes and stuff like that. But many of these that we're going to talk about tonight didn't actually happen. Of course, we can debate and, all that kind of stuff over how much it happened or if it had an effect on the timeline. And there's little variations on each of them. But yeah, so that's basically how the whole thing started. So.
Yeah, and Yesterday's Enterprise is my favorite. I think Yesterday's Enterprise is the single best thing that the franchise ever produced.
Yeah, it's a shame there wasn't a movie about that one.
Yeah, and I've got there's a book, there were a couple of authors of that script. Basically, there were two people that had similar ideas, and they sort of said, "Hey, you guys should work together," and so they did and produced the script. And I think in that book that one of them wrote about that particular episode, called, wait for it, "The Making of Yesterday's Enterprise." They quote Rick Berman as saying, "If I had realized that we were going to be making next-gen movies, we never would have wasted that script on an episode. We would have just sat on that script until it was time to make a movie. And it would have been a fantastic movie." Although,
and you know what?
There were a few things that were in the script that I'm kind of glad got left on the cutting room floor.
Well, yeah, but there's always stuff like that, right? I mean,
yeah.
When it works well, the junk and the useless stuff that doesn't move the story forward or was just silly gets left on the floor. And that one, the system worked. Obviously, we've all seen episodes where maybe it doesn't work so well either. But
yeah.
So, let's see here. The
and from Argo. Does that sound? That's not ringing any bells with me. Does that ring a bell with you, Matt? Pat?
Band from Argo. No.
Is that an Enterprise episode?
No. That's not a. I mean, I suppose it could be a Discovery episode. So this is probably not a comprehensive list of every possible episode that could go into this category. But these are definitely some favorites. I think we're talking about 8 or 9. But Band from Argo is not one I'm aware of.
Rob Davidoff said it's a song by Leslie Fish. And Leslie Fish is a filker, if I remember correctly. So, so that she would, I am not familiar with it.
Okay. All right.
So what were you up to last week? What have you been up to since the last time we were on the air together? You tell your story, and then I will tell the story about how I got to meet Wright Sublette, and a couple of days later did not have to buy a new car in Enterprise, Alabama, the home of the statue of the boll weevil. But go ahead.
Enterprise, Alabama. How long has it been since we've been on the air, or since I've been on the air?
I did last week by myself, and then I missed.
And then you missed a couple.
I missed.
And I haven't done anything by myself, so it's just been a busy 6 weeks for me.
Yeah.
I've had Navy traveling and stuff, and then at my airline job, as you can imagine, airlines are scrambling to hire people, which means people in training departments are scrambling to train people, and so they are. We're working lots of overtime and stuff like that, and so sadly, I work Saturday nights very frequently. So, so between some Navy stuff, events that actually were involved on Saturday night, and my current job, it's good busy, right? I mean, it's very, very grateful and thankful to be busy, but it's been busy. So, let's just call it less productive or less. But anyways,
it's the more fun
for. The good news the stuff I get paid. Yeah, I get paid for it. So the stuff I get paid for, sometimes unfortunately has to take priority. So the last month and a half has been such a month and a half. But I'm pretty lucky. I'm getting to work overtime. So and that works out pretty well. So grateful that things are going in the right direction. So, especially in the airline industry, you got to enjoy it when it is.
Yeah. So, well,
yeah.
So last, let's see, I got to go last week. I was solo. The week before that, I was down near Wright's place, I went down to clean out the apartment of my friend Arias Kaufman, who died on June 28th, a stroke. And so there were 4 of us there, his cousin Pablo, his brother Vic, our friend Prescott, and myself went down and did that. And so the first night when I was, I stopped at a couple of places along the way for work. So I was able to kill multiple birds with one stone. At one point, it's like, I'm going to drive literally within 6 miles of some people that we keep saying, hey, we should have a meeting. So you know what? We should have a meeting. Let's have a meeting. And so I got a chance to see them, and they're doing some nifty stuff directly related to the day job. And I got to see I met with Arias's boss and the people he works with, because Arias's boss used to be the guy in the cubicle next to me, but he decided he was supposed to hire Arias to work in Dayton, but instead he moved to Florida to work for another part of the agency, and he hired Arias to work in Florida. So I got a chance to see their facility and stuff. It was the first time I've been to Florida, I think. If I've been to Florida, I went to Puerto Rico once, and I have this feeling that I changed planes in Florida. I think I changed planes in Florida on that trip to Puerto Rico, but I'm not positive about that.
What airline?
I don't remember. It was whatever airline CNA wanted to send me on. The first airline was whatever airline CNA wanted to send me on. The second airline was an airline called the United States Navy. And so that was my first carrier landing was on that trip. So I flew on and walked off. I flew on through Rosie Roads. So there had been a hurricane had gone through, and the original plan was send Chris to Puerto Rico. He can write out the hurricane in Puerto Rico, and then we'll figure out how to get him out to the ship. Well, that ended when the governor.
What could go wrong?
Yeah, what could possibly go wrong? I'll note that that's the exact same plan that I suggested for cleaning out Arias's apartment when the hurricane was bearing down on Florida. I said, let's just go write it out in place. It's like, nah. As it turns out, that part of Florida didn't get hit by the hurricane. But one of the things that stopped us from doing that plan at the beginning of July was we sort of realized it's like, okay, it can either come and hit us. If it goes left, it'll hit us. If it goes right, then it won't hit us. But then we'll drive into it on our way to Virginia with the truck. And so it's kind of like, since we're going to be going diagonal across the eastern U.S., it doesn't really matter where it goes. At some point, we get to deal with it. So let's just not deal with it. But eventually, they ended up with, they closed the airport, and I flew down with a coworker. The coworker was going to end up on the aircraft carrier. I was going to end up on an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer. So I ended up on USS Porter, DDG-78. And they were pushing all the people that were going out to the small boys early. And that's because the carrier was still full of people from the previous exercise, and they had to pull those people off. It's a very interesting airline scheduling problem, right? You're going to have this massive influx of people at the end to get to the carrier, but you don't have room for them yet. There's no hotel rooms available. You have to empty out the hotel first. So I got sent out. I didn't have to be out there for like 4 days. They sent me out like 4 days early just because we need to push people out. So I got like 4 days of just hanging out on board this destroyer. And it was my second time at sea, my first time on a destroyer, and it was fantastic. My colleague, I got 20 hours in Puerto Rico at this luxury resort. My colleague got 3 days in Puerto Rico at the luxury resort. So she got a massage, and she got a pedicure, and she laid on the beach, and she had a grand old time. So I was eating Navy food. I loved it. I had a grand time too. So in any event, we got the truck, we got everything packed up. We got the truck filled. We lost power. We think that what happened is Arias's dad must have canceled his credit card, and the power company went to charge it and went, okay, it's canceled. We're going to pull the plug on the power or something. We never did figure out what happened, but it's like it's Florida, so it's like 100 degrees, and we were without power for like 6 hours. The last 6 hours we were there as we were filling up the truck. Even after 6 hours of going in and out constantly, it was still cooler in the apartment than it was outside. So from that standpoint, it was a semi-win. And it did sort of put a cap. We had to finish because we were losing light. Eventually, it would be too dark to work in the apartment. And so the plan was to try to get out about 5. We got out about 8, which is about the time that I thought we were going to get out. And so the truck takes off, and Prescott and I hang out so that I can take Prescott to the airport the next day. I take Prescott to the airport. I do one last drop off of stuff with Arias's boss, Mike, and then I start heading north because I'm going to go to Huntsville, Alabama, and go see a Saturn V. Because there's a museum there, the U.S. Space and Rocket Center, that's got a Saturn V. It's one of 3 Saturn V's that are in existence, and I was going to go see this. And I got about an hour north of town, and my check engine light comes on, and my car starts shaking. There's clearly something, like I'm looking in the rear view mirror expecting to see engine parts bouncing down the highway. Pull over, call AAA. I'll leave off the details of that. Suffice it to say that after an hour and 40 minutes of waiting, I finally get AAA to admit that they've told the towing company the total wrong story, and the towing company isn't coming. And I say, well, you should call them back and tell them what I actually told you to say. Because they had it in there. They told the towing company, he needs you to come and take a look at his car. When what I said was, my check engine light came on. I need a tow 36 miles to Mitchell Nissan in Enterprise, Alabama. So I got towed to Enterprise, Alabama, expecting that I was going to have to buy a new car. They told me they couldn't even look at the car until the next day. They then proceeded to finish up their day's work and look at the car and discover that it was a relatively simple fix, and they fixed it, and I got the car back at 4 p.m. So I did not have to buy a car in Enterprise, Alabama.
Which is definitely good.
I do have a picture of me standing with the statue, the statue of the boll weevil that they have in the middle of Main Street. And that's because at some point in the past, the boll weevil came and ate their cotton crop. Most towns would consider this a bad thing, and they did at the time. But they said, maybe we should grow something else other than cotton. What else could we grow? And they settled on peanuts, and they made way more money growing peanuts than they ever made growing cotton. So this town, everything is named after boll weevils. Boll weevil this, boll weevil that. My favorite was boll weevil lanes for the bowling alley.
Nice.
So I did not have to buy a car in Enterprise, Alabama. Got up early the next morning, drove the 4.5 hours to Huntsville, was there basically when the museum opened at 10 a.m., spent an hour looking at the Saturn V and all the other stuff. Got to put my hand on an F1 engine, got to put my hand on an RS-25 engine, so got to touch the biggest, most powerful engine that NASA ever built, and probably the best engine that NASA's ever built in the RS-25, which is the Space Shuttle main engine. Got to see all that stuff, and then got to drive to Cincinnati and then sit in a traffic jam in Cincinnati for 45 minutes and then make the final hour-long drive to home.
Gotcha.
So that's what that week was for me. But
yeah, definitely a lot of driving.
So, but and then I came back and went back to work. So, which is keeping me busy as well.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
And is going to send me to Hawaii at the end of the month. So actually, Pat, just to let you know, I'm flying back on Saturday from that trip. So I will not arrive back in my abode until Sunday. I thought I was going to be back on Saturday and capable of being the zombie accompanying you on that show.
Zombie host.
Yeah, zombie host, but I'm not actually leaving until Saturday because the airline schedules are a lot different than they were pre-COVID.
Mhm.
There are no flights leaving Hawaii that leave later than noon.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It used to be that there was like a 1:30 or 2 o'clock flight, and then there was like a 3:30 flight or something like that. But that isn't true anymore.
Gotcha. All right. Well, we'll figure something out. We'll manage.
Yep. So
All
we'll make it work, but you're on your own.
Sounds good. I think we can handle it. So shall we proceed?
That sounds like a good plan. So now I will, while Pat's bringing up the slide deck, you should all be thankful of the perseverance of Pat. He had more Microsoft problems today trying to get this slide deck from the laptop where it worked perfectly to the desktop that he uses for the show, despite the fact that he was trying to do it through Microsoft OneDrive. So even with and he's doing this under Windows on a Windows box, so that like it's all Microsoft all the way through, and it still was problematic.
Yes.
So welcome to the 21st century, everybody.
Yeah, it is definitely annoying. So okay, so what we are going to actually, if someone can, let me share my screen.
And by someone, you mean Lussa.
Yeah. Yes. That's someone. All right. Cool. Seems to be working. And we will hide that. And this even, let me see something here. Oh yeah, and that brings it over into here. All right. So it all seems to be working. So we will we'll get going. But anyway, so we thought it would be fun to just take a look at some of the episodes that arguably never happened in the prime timeline. Now they may have had an effect somewhere along the way, but anyways, and some things might be a little bit on the debatable side and stuff, like whether they're actually one of the best episodes or not. But so what I did is I did also look these up on a list of best episodes to see how somebody else rated these episodes. So what I used was the 50 best Star Trek episodes ever by EmpireOnline.com. A few other top 10 or top 20 lists, not all of these made it. So obviously this is a highly subjective thing. So with that out of the way, and there probably are even more episodes that fit into this category, but these are the ones that, have seen recently and were pretty obvious and generally, I think, considered to be pretty good episodes. So, and you know what? If there's any debate about it, well, then those are the fun kind of debates. So hopefully, fun to have over a beer sometime. So one of the first ones is The Inner Light. Basically, Picard gets zapped by an alien probe. And basically, while he's in a coma, it essentially is transmitting an entire life experience where he gets to experience a full life with a family and a wife and everything. And of course, the probe is just something that is a means for them to communicate their history and that sort of thing to other space travelers out there. So, but I don't know. To me, it kind of begs the question, what would it be like to wake up with the memories of a whole separate life on top of the memories you currently have? I'm assuming that would be confusing and a little tough to deal with. But anyways, ultimately, a really good episode, and it's this would be a good episode, I think, even for someone who doesn't really like science fiction that much, because it's just kind of an interesting set of ideas and stuff. So, but anyways, Chris, what did you think about this one? Any thoughts on it?
So, my 3 favorite episodes of Star Trek are Yesterday's Enterprise, Darmok, and The Inner Light.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a utterly fantastic episode.
Yep. And this one did get listed as the 10th best out of the top 50 episodes. Now, if you remember, there's something like 700 hours of Star Trek now. So maybe even 800.
Yeah, it's closer to 800 by now.
Yeah. So the top 50 is actually a significant thing. In most cases, that's the entire television series. So, and these top 50 range the gamut from Picard all the way back to the old series. So, all right. And then of course this one ends with, the haunting scene where he's playing that flute. As kind of a memory, and the probe, of course, I believe had the flute on board. So somebody was going to be the lucky recipient of this flute and carry around the memory of this planet and this race. And it turns out to be Picard.
Yeah. So 2 quick stories. One is when the flute went up for auction as part of when Paramount decided to sort of clear out its warehouse of all the next gen stuff. When the flute went up for auction, Christie's was expecting that it would sell for like $300. It sold for $40,000, plus an $8,000 commission on top of that. The flute was recently resold, like within the last, I want to say it was 2018, 2017, something like that. It sold for $190,000.
Jeez, that's nuts.
It's not even a working flute. It's just a prop. It doesn't actually play at all. So that's the first thing. The second thing I was going to say is there was a wonderful thread on Reddit at one point that asked the question, what if after the 4th season, or maybe it was the 3rd season, Patrick Stewart had not decided to go back to England to do Shakespeare and had stayed on The Next Generation? And everybody responded to this alternate history thread in character. And one of the things that I remember seeing there was, when Captain Riker gets the flute at the end, and he thinks that he's gonna, he picks up the flute like he's gonna play it on the flute, but instead he picked up his trombone and played the song on his trombone about what a moving experience that was, because it perfectly represented the blending of this fake life with the real life, and how he was going to carry that forward with him, and he made it part of his own, etc. It was a wonderful thread. It was an absolutely wonderful thread.
Yeah, because it talked about all the things we would have lost, right? If Picard hadn't gone to England, or Patrick Stewart hadn't gone to England.
Yeah, and it talked about how when he came back to do Best of Both Worlds, about how it was so much more poignant because it was the great homecoming, right? It was fantastic, and I always think of that every time I see Yesterday's Enterprise, and knowing that later on Denise Crosby comes back.
Mm-hmm.
As Sela, and now I think it's Sela's the name of the daughter.
Sela. Yep.
I have to say I never particularly liked that particular character, but I did think that Tasha Yar, Denise Crosby coming back for the episode Yesterday's Enterprise, and the scene where she and Guinan have the conversation, and then the scene where Tasha Yar and Picard have the conversation, are just fantastic. Mm-hmm. But we'll get to that, I suppose, later on in the slide deck.
Yeah, not too far off. So, yeah, Inner Light was listed as number 10. The next one is Tapestry. And I always kind of enjoyed this. And, so this is a whole episode, you could argue it's kind of a flashback, but at the same time, Picard sort of gets to, potentially change history and stuff like that. This did not make the top 50 list. But I always thought it was entertaining because, it has Q. So that's usually a good sign. And I actually kind of like the whole notion that hey, we're a product of all the good and bad decisions we made, and even the bad judgment at a young age is possibly has a lesson for you somewhere along the way. So I kind of like that. In flying, we always talk about the importance of good judgment. And then so the young pilot asks, and that you should always make sure to use your superior judgment to avoid needing to use your superior piloting skills. And so then the young pilot would ask, well, how do you get good judgment? Well, through experience. Well, how do you get experience? Through bad judgment. So it's a circular loop. Let's see here. So anyhow, like I said, fun episode. It's got Q changing his, offering him the ability to change his past and what he thought were dumb decisions in the past. And then later on. And so basically we get to see, it's a fun episode because we also get to see a little bit of Picard's past and the young Picard. But we also get to see the fact that, he chooses, Q gives him the opportunity to make the decision not to fight the Noskins because, getting impaled through the heart's generally considered a bad thing. And personally, but it leads to him having a mediocre life. Now, any of us could sit around and argue whether that's a valid point or not, but I think it's still made for kind of a fun episode that particular decision unraveled his life. And I also think there's good reason to believe that making good decisions is still a valid life strategy, because with 21st century medical technology, if you get impaled through the heart, you're probably not going to get brought back to life by some superhuman omniscient being. Bad decisions are a risky way of gaining life experience. So since of course you don't have an omniscient being looking out for you, and you don't have a writing staff making sure that your life turns out with a happy ending at the end. So I always thought that was good. And
go ahead.
And at the very end of the episode, of course, we see Picard laughing as he gets impaled through the heart. So he must be thinking, whew, that wasn't close. I almost didn't get impaled. So.
Well, okay. That scene in particular, that particular part of it. Well, first of all, I'd like to see, I'm glad that Seaman Beaumont applied to the Seaman to Admiral program and was able to get an Academy billet. So it was good to see Seaman Beaumont actually.
That's right. That is where we saw him. Okay. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
I immediately looked that guy up because he looked really familiar. Go back for a second.
Okay. Yeah.
He looked really familiar. And I knew I had seen him from somewhere, and he hasn't done a whole lot. I guess he's got a lot of credits, but it's always like Stranger Number 4. But he was Seaman Beaumont in Hunt for Red October. So
yeah.
That scene where, so it's funny when they showed this fight the first time, they make the comment about why Picard gets stabbed and then he laughs. Why does he laugh? And we see why he laughs. He laughs because it's solving the problem with Q, blah, 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 which means it always happened.
Yep.
So that's exactly how it played out. He laughed the first time. He was laughing at Q. They answered the question, why was he laughing? He was laughing at Q. And so that I thought was a very nice little touch.
Yeah. Yep. definitely a fun episode. I really enjoyed it. And now we get to the one we wish had been a full-length feature movie. Empire did rate this one as the third best episode. So, and the other first and second place went to the old series, City on the Edge of Forever and Devil in the Dark. So, I think we could probably all have a throwdown over, over the top 10 list and stuff, and we all have a few different ideas. But
I'm actually just heartened the fact that they didn't say best of both worlds for the best next gen episode.
Yeah, I can't remember where that made it. I think it's somewhere in the top 20 though. So I mean, they were good. It was definitely good.
Yeah.
And you can also argue that this episode did sort of happen because Tasha Yar got captured by the Romulans in the past, and her daughter made it forward to being Sela, and then comes back to haunt Captain Picard. So you could argue that this happened, but again, it. But what we see of the crew and Picard and Riker and everybody on the crew of the Enterprise, the battleship Enterprise D, never happened. So, as far as anybody knows, and even Star Trek characters don't believe Sela's story because it's way too outlandish.
Yeah, and I'll notice, going back to the various naming and typing conversations we've had, they explicitly describe the Galaxy class as a battleship.
Mm-hmm.
At least that
in this show.
In this universe, it's a battleship.
Yeah, and actually in the novel to the motion picture, the Enterprise there is described as a battleship also, but that they call it a heavy cruiser because it doesn't fit 23rd century political correctness or something like that. But the fact is that it's the most powerful ship in Starfleet at the time. So you could probably make the argument that whatever the newest large explorer vessel is off the line is probably their most powerful ship of its day, which, you can argue makes it a battleship, or, as we find in Star Trek, Starfleet refers to them as heavy cruisers as their most powerful ships. So,
I like the bit at when Tasha Yar goes to Picard to ask him for a transfer. That conversation always stands out for me.
Yeah.
Because the interesting thing there, she always, as she said, I always thought that there's always a chance that I could die in a Starfleet uniform. If that's going to happen, I want it to mean something.
Mm-hmm.
The part that upset her wasn't the part where you're going to die. You're supposed to be dead. The part that upset her was and it was for no reason.
Yeah, but kind of to take Picard's side a little bit there, it's like, well, you could still have a long life and a full career. You don't have to die now.
There's a good point there.
So, but that's if I were playing the devil's advocate. And then, of course, always be wary of starship captains that make statements like, let history never forget the name Enterprise. If you're on that ship, it's not going to be a good day.
Yeah, it reminds me of the line from 2010, where the point where Haywood Floyd and his boss down on Earth are exchanging messages back and forth. And his boss on Earth says, the president gave a speech to the nation last night. He evoked Lincoln. You always know they're going to get us into trouble when they evoke Lincoln.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, I really enjoyed that movie.
I to be honest, and I know that this is enough to get you strung up in certain parts of science fiction fandom. I much prefer 2010 over 2001.
Yeah. I prefer 2010 over 2001 any day.
2001 was a standard Stanley Kubrick movie. The cinematography was perfect. The atmosphere was perfect, right? In terms of ambiance, I bought Eyes Wide Shut just for the scene where they're walking through the mansion at the masquerade party. Because, I just sort of looked at that and said, like, the problem with that scene is that it takes place on 20th century Earth. That clearly is a scene that should be taking place on in the court of the Emperor Shaddam IV or whatever, right? But boy, does it just drag.
Yeah, that's kind of my thought. So I mean, I don't mind character development and taking their time and stuff. That actually kind of works for me sometimes, as opposed to, chopping every scene into little 5-second clips. But yeah, it takes a while to tell the story.
Yeah.
So,
Even
and then a bunch of weird stuff that you don't understand is, I don't know. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but yeah, there's just a bunch of weird stuff that ends up happening. Kind of, well, I mean, even in the motion picture, I think you could cut out 20 minutes of that movie. So
they did make the comment about, part of it is their thinking for 2001 was like, it should be like Dust Boat. They didn't use this phrase, but I mean, I am, right? When they did the director's cut of Dust Boat, they added in 45 minutes of boredom. Because the idea is that it's really boring on the sub. Most of the time, it's really, really boring. It's cramped. It's
miserable. You got to go through what the characters are going through.
Yeah, and but every now and then, it's like sheer moments of stark raving terror. And Keir Dullea and I can't think of the other guy's name, despite the fact he was later the guy who played David Poole. I saw an interview with them, and they basically said, yeah, these are guys that have been selected for their low-key personalities, right? Because they have to not get on each other's nerves, et cetera, et cetera. So they're low-key guys. They've spent a shit ton of time together, not getting on each other's nerves. They're not people that are excitable, and it's a long, boring journey. And, as actors, they did an excellent job.
Well, yeah,
making me feel exactly how boring it was.
I did watch one sci-fi show that I kind of struggled through a couple episodes and then stopped watching. It was on Netflix. I don't know, some alien thing lands on Earth, and so there are spaceships sent out to go figure out what it is. But the entire crew it's like 90210 on the ship, and they're all just plotting and scheming against each other, and everybody's excitable about everything, and it wasn't even close to believable.
This was the one with what's her name who played Starbuck?
Yeah, I guess it was.
Yeah, I watched one episode and said, no effing way, I'm done. Yeah. I just tapped out right away. And it should have been, when I saw that they went with Melrose Space as their model.
Yep, not interested.
Yeah, so. It's like, really, you guys, it's clear. I mean, yeah, they just telegraphed what they were going to do, right?
Yeah, yep.
And then they immediately show that the entire thing is going to be about teen angst and people being idiots, and it's like,
if it's all about people making the worst possible decisions and they're the crew that was sent to save Earth, don't get me wrong, they can still make something interesting and have cool characters or something, but yeah, this one didn't pull it off. Now, she is in a show called Longmire. I've kind of started watching that and really got to like it. So it's it's not her, it's I would blame the writers on this one. So, but anyways,
it's not her, it's the writers. And if I want to see people making really, really bad decisions, I know a lot of people that I can go and hang out with and watch them make really, really bad decisions.
So let's see here. So moving on here. Now we're into Deep Space Nine, and it's The Visit. The episode is The Visitor, where we get to see an elderly Jake Sisko, or actually we get to see him throughout his life after his father apparently goes missing or dies, or they don't know what happens to him. And this one got rated as the 7th best episode. But we get, like I said, we get to see what Jake's life would be like without his father. However, what happened to Jake periodically is that Captain Sisko would, or his father would appear, and then they make it, which makes him realize that, oh no, it wasn't just a ghost or hallucination that Jake saw earlier. It was actually his dad, and they figure out that he's, phasing in and out of the timeline and stuff like that. And he pops in every now and then and gets to spend a few minutes with Jake, and Jake essentially lives for those minutes. But then he brings out the Defiant crew, and they pull it out of mothballs, and we get to see all the crew a little bit older, and they have this plan, and Jake's been studying for years and years and years. He gave up his family and his wife and his children and everything to do this project, and in the end, it fails to bring his dad back. So, but and then he eventually Jake realizes, he's used up his entire life on this, but eventually Jake realizes that he was kind of the anchor that was pulling his dad along, and that once he died, that would sort of restore the timeline. And so, like I said, we get to see Jake's life, and then the loop closes, and then it essentially never happened by the end of the episode. And then we see Jake and father in the engine room, and they have at the last second, they have dodged the electrical bolt that or plasma or whatever energy it was that put Sisko, out of phase with normal time. So, but anyways, really enjoyed this episode. I think it's just a great, well-acted episode with a really cool story behind it and stuff. So really enjoyed this one.
So for what it's worth, I've been sitting here typing, trying to do comments while we go through this. And I made the comment to somebody who said that they thought it was kind of a boring episode. I said, yeah, I'm not sure I would put it in my top 400. I'm serious. I mean, I just sort of went, okay, yeah.
Well, I went back and rewatched it recently and actually paid attention to it and didn't just have it as background. And I got to say, I really enjoyed it. But
there's absolutely nothing wrong with the acting. I thought the story was kind of like, okay. I mean, it's one of those stories that really kind of depends upon, yeah, and here's the next thing I'm going to have to ask you to believe in order to buy into this. Okay, here's another one. It just seems to be like, a bunch of arbitrary plot coupons got handed to me. It's like, what do I do with these? And it also highlights one of the things that I find frustrating about Star Trek. And, I will stipulate in advance, yes, I understand you've got 44 minutes in which to tell this story, and that's tough to do. But some of the conversations that they have in Star Trek, and, I'm going to get to say this exact thing with probably the next one you're going to put up. Some of the conversations that they have when they're dealing with time-related stuff are not particularly sophisticated conversations. I'm reminded of when Spock, says the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one, and everybody goes, "Oh my God, that's so profound." I mean, I've taken an intro level philosophy course in college. You literally handle that at the beginning of the second course, the second class period. Sloppy utilitarianism is like right at the very beginning. It's not profound, people. It's just not. And so, when Sisko starts saying things to Jake like, don't kill yourself, you've got many years left. It's like, so let me get this straight. If I quote unquote kill myself and this never happens, and I live a much happier life, you're not in favor of that?
Well, but that assumes Jake's plan works, and he's right, because he was wrong earlier.
Right. Yes, but that's not what Sisko says. If Sisko had given an argument that said, look, you're doing this as an article of faith, dude. You're putting a pretty big bet down And you could be wrong. He doesn't say any of that. He just sort of says, "Oh, you shouldn't kill yourself."
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So now go to Children of Time, and I can have that exact same spiel again.
All right, we'll get to that one. Let's see here. The next one is Far Beyond the Stars. Now, this one was the 4th best episode. So this one was rated right behind. And don't get me wrong, if you pull, just to be really clear, if you pull up the best 10 episodes or best 20 episodes or whatever in Google, you'll get a different set of episodes, in totally different orders. So I just picked one and went with it because they had 50. But anyways, they rated this as the 4th best episode out of the whole thing. So it's the highest rated Deep Space Nine episode. And basically, Sisko has a prophet-induced vision of another life as a writer in the 1950s. And so in this one, this is the one where we get to see all the characters without the makeup and the costumes, and they're all playing science fiction writers. And I did watch this one recently, and I thought I had a lot of fun with this one. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it quite a bit because some of these for a long time I was skipping over, like, that's not very action packed. And The Visitor was one of those that I skipped over for a long time. So I had just recently rewatched it out of curiosity. So.
Yeah, I will admit this is another one that didn't do a whole lot for me.
Yeah.
The story within the story was perfectly fine. But it felt like it was very contrived. It wasn't nearly as realistic. It didn't fit in nearly as well as your average holodeck episode fit in. Right. And it just sort of seemed like, okay, where did this come from? What exactly was the lesson the prophets were trying to, none of it really seemed to, I don't get it. I don't understand why this fit in. It just, at some level, it kind of felt like they had an extra set on the lot that had been set up for some other TV show or something. They said, "Hey, let's go make an episode there."
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so this one, yeah. So, so in the end, this isn't a time travel episode. This was kind of in the same way that Q ran through an alternate timeline, this was sort of a prophet-induced vision. But you're right. I'd have to go back and maybe watch it one more time to try to tease out what the prophets were actually trying to say or teach Sisko.
I mean, it's sort of like, if this episode didn't happen, what's missing?
Yeah.
What do you lose from the series if this episode just doesn't happen?
And that I'm not too sure. I do know that later on, I think in the 7th season or something, when Cassidy tries to talk Ben into going to Vic Fontaine's bar in the holodeck, he initially doesn't want to do it because of how African Americans were treated during those years, and he puts Vic Fontaine's in that happens in that same time frame. So, anyways, so I don't know if that was an intentional memory our character that Sisko carried or not, but I do know that it was figured into it. So. And let's see here. So the next one, Deep Space Nine episode, is Hard Time. And I'll admit, I have not recently rewatched this one, but this was one where basically O'Brien is wrongly accused of a crime. And basically the punishment is to have him live like 20 years in prison, and they give him the memories of having lived in prison. And it's kind of O'Brien's struggle with, with all the issues and, PTSD or trauma of having been in prison and having killed his cellmate at one point. So, and then finally, of course, they help on the road to recovery and all that kind of stuff. And, happy, everything turns out okay for O'Brien. But it's a tough episode for O'Brien. But this one was listed as the 47th of the top 50 episodes. So
I like this a lot better than I like the two previous ones, the Deep Space Nine ones we've talked about. I think this one I really, really did kind of like. The one thing I had in my, I wasn't quite sure about, because they never really explain it. It's like, is his cellmate actually based on a real person? Do they have multiple? Is this like a virtual reality experience? You've got multiple people, or are they just simply implanting memories? Because they talk about how no, they're not just like, they squirted memories in. He actually lived through it and made all the decisions, et cetera, et cetera. And so that implies to me that it's possible, at least, that there was something a little bit more sophisticated going on. And for all we know, that cellmate is, he and the cellmate's a real person, and they're actually connected.
Yeah.
Somehow. The second thing that occurs to me is you may recall that there was a little line there that said that you've been sentenced to at least 15 years, and we've discovered you've been in here for 20, so we're letting you out. And he only killed the cellmate like a couple of years beforehand. That really made me wonder if the idea was that they keep you there until you do something like that. Whether part of the punishment is, you come out feeling like you're a murderer. I'll note that might actually backfire in a society.
Right. They might like it. And there are a certain percentage of people that go, yeah, I don't mind that. That's actually kind of cool.
Yeah. Well, or, like I've already done that once,
Yeah.
Gets easier. But I thought this was actually just a really, really good episode. Yeah. I really liked it. So made me wonder about Federation relations with that particular
it doesn't seem like a nice place. Well, it doesn't necessarily mean they were part of the Federation. So
no, but I mean, like, did they file a protest?
Yeah.
Did they destroy their capital city? Did they
send a team? Well, they didn't have the time, because I think, it's only a few minutes of his life that gets used in there. It's just he feels the 20. No,
I mean afterwards.
Yeah. Right. Oh, yeah. File a protest, but yeah, it's so quick. There's no time to save them. And let's see here. And then there's Children's of Time. Okay, go. This one did not make the top 50 list either.
I actually think it's all right, let's try that one more time. I think it's actually a very good episode. I liked it as an episode. The problem I have with it is, once again, I don't think the discussion of the there's a couple of problems I have. One is that the discussion of the implications of how they go about doing things strikes me. They have a little bit more of a conversation about whether they're actually killing people or not.
Mm-hmm.
If you change the timeline, are you actually killing people?
Yeah.
But it seemed to me that could have been a more sophisticated conversation. They could have said things like, is this the same timeline or not? Star Trek generally seems to default to the idea that there's only one timeline, which is really weird for a place that a show that has the mirror universe in it,
Mm-hmm.
and there's clearly multiple timelines there, but they never really talk about whether are they trying to get back to their timeline, or are they trying to change the timeline?
Mm-hmm.
They never have that conversation.
Yeah, I think the people in the universe tend to believe that there's one particular timeline that needs to be kept on the straight and narrow and not be altered. But I think the problem with the time travel episodes, one, it gets used too often for movies, but the other problem is different writers are going to make different assumptions about how time travel works. So the consistency thing is kind of off, but it's a way for anything goes kind of a thing, I suppose.
Somebody made the observation, a fairly detailed discussion of it, about how no two Terminator movies are based on the same theory of time travel.
Oh yeah, right. They're all different. That's right. And I actually I was doing a lot of flying, so I normally I default when I'm on an airplane to watching The Martian, just because I know how it's going to go, and it 2 hours sitting in the back of an airplane passed pretty quick. But I did sneak slightly out of my comfort zone and watch the most recent Terminator movie, and I got to say I kind of enjoyed it. But you're right. Yeah, they're always based on an entirely different. Actually, they're all based on entirely different timelines, because the assumption going into the new movie is, oh yeah, well, things got altered somewhere along the way, and now it's a whole different set of stuff.
But even time travel seems to work differently from movie to movie. And
sure,
the different timelines I actually kind of like in the TV series, the Sarah Connor Chronicles, which I liked a great deal.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever there's a whole bunch of agents that get sent back, and whenever two agents run into each other, whenever they meet, the very first question they asked each other is, when did Judgment Day occur for you? Because they understand that they're dealing with multiple timelines and etc. And it's like, 2015, it's like, oh shit, we're losing ground.
Okay.
For me, it was 2022 or something like that.
Okay. Yeah. And I've never watched the Sarah Connor Chronicles. So
it had a couple of interesting things, like Skynet is not a unitary being. There was actually a couple of different Skynets.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, and in the latest movie, the threat was, hell, I guess I already forgot. I'd have to go back and rewatch it.
I haven't. I saw the second to last one, but I didn't see the last one. The last one I saw was the one that starred what's her name from Game of Thrones.
Maybe I missed one.
Yeah, so it starred what's her name from Game of Thrones as Sarah Connor, and it starred Skynet was played by oh shit, what's his name? He was the guy who played Doctor Who.
Okay.
Skynet actually had a human body for purposes of that movie.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So one thing, Chris, we are 5 minutes over our time. So I guess we can probably wrap up Year of Hell and the Enterprise episode next time.
Okay, that works for me. I do want to say, though, I liked how this one ended. I liked the idea of Odo sabotaging things.
Yeah.
And it's actually kind of interesting because, of course, Odo survives in either timeline.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So arguably, he doesn't pay the same price that what the
all the other
character that all the other ones. Arguably, he doesn't pay the same price.
Yeah, that's right. And Well, and they do this a couple times in Deep Space Nine. So Odo's basically makes the decision, well, Kira's the woman I love, therefore anything I do for her is justifiable. And I think Worf made a similar decision in one of the episodes where Jadzia got wounded, and he blows the mission to save his wife, which, it's a good argument for not going on top secret, highly dangerous missions with your spouse.
That is a good argument.
Especially ones that might impact the lives of millions of other people.
I like the comment that Rob Davidoff made, which was, you keep talking like isn't only one timeline, and the Department of Temporal Investigations is going to come for you. Yep. Okay.
And
I didn't mean it.
And I thought it was hilarious in Trials and Tribulations that, they had the Department of Temporal Investigations.
Kirk, 7 violations.
He was a menace.
Or 13 violations or whatever it was.
Yeah, that was definitely fun. So, let's see here. All right. So next week we'll finish up. We'll talk about Year of Hell, and we'll talk about, there was an Enterprise episode that happened in season 3. And I'm not always a huge fan of Voyager as much as the other series, but their 2-part episodes, I think, are some of the best Star Trek. Are really good Star Trek episodes. I mean, they're movies by themselves.
I had never sat down and really watched Year of Hell. I'd seen bits and pieces of it, but one of the things that I'll say it again next week, one of the things that I thought was just fantastic was Kurtwood Smith was able to make a genocidal maniac a sympathetic character. I mean, he's
not bad.
Yeah, not bad at all. And we should also add to that list. I don't think it was on our original list, but what's the finale for Next Gen? All Good Things?
All Good Things. Yeah, that occurred to me later on.
We need to add that onto the list too. So I think we got enough for a full show, and there's probably 1 or 2 other ones that we could add on there.
Yeah, actually, yeah. If somebody,
City on the Edge of Forever.
Well, no, that was a time travel, but it actually happened, right? They saved the timeline by Kirk. So that actually happened.
That's a good point.
You know what I mean? Like the argument is that in Children of Time, did they actually, they had all this experience with all these people, and then they changed the timeline or make a timeline choice, and suddenly they never existed. Same thing with Year of Hell. At the end of this, it all gets restored, and it's like they woke up. It's like the JR got shot, and they woke up from a bad dream, and suddenly it never happened. So that's kind of the point of this. These couple things. So, let's see. But yeah, there might be. You're right. All Good Things, I think, would be another one. There's at least an Enterprise episode, right? So that you were talking about. It was during the Xindi.
There's the Enterprise episode where Archer has lost his short-term memory. There's E2, which is the one where they discover the wreckage of the Enterprise.
Yep, he sees it right here. Yep.
Yeah, and
actually, I think there's also there is a Voyager episode, I think, in season 7, where they're trying to get back and Voyager crashes and they're trying to fix. So I'd have to go back and rewatch that one. So yeah, there's certainly out of 700 episodes, probably a few more that follow in this.
And there's that Voyager episode where they all turn into salamanders. I'm pretty sure that episode never happened.
Let's hope so. Now, we did try to put the stipulation that you could argue that some of these are really good episodes.
Oh yeah.
Right. It's there are some things that just never should have happened to begin with. So
this reminds me about how much I wish they had made a sequel to Highlander. It's a shame they never made a sequel to Highlander.
It's a shame they never made a sequel to Highlander because that was such a good movie.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a real shame. It's a real shame. So,
all right. Sounds good.
So I think we're done. For what it's worth, I have not put in chat comments to last week's episode, but I will go through the chat log and respond to stuff. I was going to try to do that today, and I got distracted. I'm probably not going to do one for. Oh yeah, Tim, you're right. It's E squared. It's not E2. It's E squared. I probably am not going to do one for this week because I've been sort of typing along as Pat's been talking, so I'm not sure that I've got anything to add to the comments for this week. But I am going to get caught up on the other one.
Oh, that's right. It's Archer fighting the Nazi aliens and stuff like that too.
Oh, right? Yeah. We got to do that one.
Yeah,
because I've never actually seen that one.
Well, so watch it and then decide whether it's one of the best episodes that never happened.
Good point. Good point.
Though I did go back, I remember a few years ago, and rewatch all of season 3 with the Xindi stuff, and it was actually good. It was actually pretty good. So
I liked Enterprise a lot more the second time through than I did the first.
Yeah.
I think they fell into this trap of deciding that they had to explain all these things, like the damn forehead ridges and stuff like that, and it got turned.
That was just at the very end of the series.
Yeah, at the very end, they were sort of going like, okay, maybe we got this new formula where all we do is sort of set up things for the. No. There was a couple of places where they did stuff that I liked, like what they did with the Orion slave girls, where they discovered that the Orion slave girls are actually running everything. But there's other bits of that where the forehead ridges in particular just drove me crazy. I did like the Mirror Universe one, though. The Mirror Universe episode sort of tying it all together. Yeah, that was pretty cool.
That's right. So there is also the Voyager finale. Season 7 of Voyager is actually a really good season. So timeless. Okay, I see that. All right.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about the Voyager finale. So Voyager is the series that I'm least familiar with, where I've got the biggest gaps in my knowledge. Because just where I was in my life at that point, I just wasn't watching a whole lot of TV. So yeah, let's add that to it.
All right, sounds good. Okay, Lissa, we're out. We've taken up too much of your time. You have a great night. Have a great night and great week, everybody, and we'll see you.